Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's subject selection presentation for our Year 9 students who are heading into Year 10 in 2022. Thank you for making the effort to be online tonight. It's not our usual way of presenting this information, but given the current climate, we thought this was the best way to get this really important information to all our families and students. Normally, at this part of the evening, we would start with our prayer. And while I'm not going to read the prayer out this evening to you all, I'd like you to take a moment just to make sure that you're really present in this moment and considering the decisions that need to be made in the next couple of weeks for you and your son, and to just be with a heart full of gratitude and thanks for the opportunities that your son and the families within our community have each and every day. So before we get started into tonight's presentation, given that this is a different type of format, I thought I'd just go through some of the procedural type items in regards to this webinar presentation. Please be aware that this is a one-way presentation, meaning that while you can see me and the slides on the screen, the families, of course, you can't be seen at home, and there is a little bit of a time delay of about 20 to 30 seconds of my presentation to when that's received at your end. So when we get to the conclusion of tonight's presentation, please be aware that I will remain online for some time after that to continue receiving questions to take into account time for that delay. There will be a recording of this presentation that'll be distributed through the college website in the coming days. We'll just need a little bit of time just to make sure that's downloaded correctly and ready to be added to the college website. There is a Q&A process that as part of this webinar. So as you're going through the content tonight, if you have any questions, please click on the little question icon on the Teams page. Those questions will remain private. And so you won't be able to see other people's questions coming through. If we decide that there is a trend to some questions that families are asking that are being commonly asked, we may choose to publish those so that all families will be able to read the response. And I have a team of moderators here with me tonight that'll be monitoring your questions. So please feel free to ask anything that you have. Questions can be, as I said, kept private. They can be published or they can be dismissed if the question isn't probably pertinent to this presentation. So our goals for tonight is for you to hopefully understand the process to follow when choosing electives for your son for Year 10 in 2022. And then over the next couple of weeks after tonight's presentation, to really access the information available and to make the best possible decision for your son before the cutoff of when preferences need to be in by. And that's in week 3, which is Friday the 6th of August. So we'll go through towards the end of this presentation the process for choosing subjects and how you'll do that. But just to be aware of that date from the get-go, that's really, really important. And some key people who can help you with this process. So obviously there's myself in my head of learning and teaching role, and I've been with the boys on this journey since they started Year 7, and I'm going to continue working with them right up until the end of Year 10. We've also got our Careers and Pathways team. So Tanya Cooper is the head of Pathways and Bianca Doyle is a Careers mentor. And both of those staff members, they're very keen to talk to students about things like work experience, TAFE, university, options in the workforce and so on. So they're more than happy to help you and your son with their decision making. We also have our fantastic heads of faculty who are the experts in each of these subject areas. So if you want particular advice about what would my son study in this subject or what sort of assessment is in this subject, then your heads of faculty are really the ideal people to get in touch with. So before we get into what subjects are available and how many you choose and so on, it's important to reflect upon, well, what does any student need to be successful? And we've been using this slide quite a bit across a number of our presentations in recent years because it is so important whether a student is in grade 7 or grade 12. These ingredients help a student be successful. Boys particularly need to have clear goals and know what it is that they're hoping to achieve, whether it be a short-term goal or a longer-term goal heading into their senior years. Organisation is not something that comes naturally to everyone, and so it's important to learn skills to develop organisational methods to make sure that everything is ready when it needs to be, that the correct equipment is there, that we know how to access the information we need, and so on. Time management and balance are particularly important as students get older and they get busier in their lives. They can often be trying to juggle school, co-curricular activities, work and a social life, and it's important to make sure the right amount of time and the right balance is given to all those activities. And it is really important to ensure that our best effort and perseverance is always being shown in all our activities. Not doing just enough, that'll do, or oh look, it's done, I'll move on now, but putting in our best effort and being proud of the work that we produce. And finally, as we get older and we develop more maturity and relationships with both our peers and our teachers and our family changes, this helps us understand how we can best navigate our future learning journey and then beyond after schooling life. So when we're planning to succeed in our senior years into year 10, 11 and 12, these are really important habits to develop. To have a good study plan, have a good study environment. Maybe doing your homework in front of the TV is not the best option, for instance. And learning to take responsibility for your own learning and results. Not doing your work because your teacher tells you to or your parents tell you to, but because you want to. You want to do the very best that you can. To ask for help from your teachers. Your teachers aren't mind readers. They don't know if you're struggling with a concept, and it's always important to ask for that help because there's so much help available at Iona. All you've got to do is ask for it. To look at your results, monitor your progress, look for areas which you're really strong in and capitalise on those strengths, and look for areas which are weaknesses for you and how can you improve on those weaknesses. And then, as I said before, find a balance. It's important that you have a variety of experiences throughout your week, whether that be co-curricular activities, working in a part-time job, spending time with your friends and family, and also on your schoolwork, and prioritising those at different points in the year when there's particular pressure points, around assessment and testing times, for instance. So when we consider year 10, it is in some ways quite similar to what you've already got used to in year 9, but there's also some differences, and that's what we really want to talk about tonight. So in year 10, you will still be studying some core or compulsory subjects, and then there will be some electives like you've had this year. The year 10 timetable, however, is created in a very similar structure to the timetable for year 11 and 12, and this is an effort to try and help you transition to senior school the following year. So as you can see on the slide here, and this is one that you would have seen last year in the subject selection presentation, as a student moves through from primary years into then lower secondary and then into senior secondary, the number of subjects that a student studies starts to really reduce and they become more specialised. So next year in year 10, you'll be looking at studying 7 reportable subjects, which then further reduces down to 6 as you head into senior in 11 and 12. You'll see that there is also subject selection that will occur at about this point next year for year 10, and that'll be then moving into year 11. So more opportunities to continue to refine which areas that you really enjoy and you're passionate about and that you are good at. So these core subjects we talk about, all students in year 10 will study religious education, English, mathematics, humanities and social sciences, and also health and physical education. So that's what the boys often call their sport lesson. Now that subject is not assessed, but the 4 above that, they are assessable subjects. The students will also choose then 3 electives, and the electives they can choose from are going to be mentioned in just a moment. So let's talk about maths. Maths is a little bit different in grade 10. Students will be placed into an appropriate maths class depending on their result at the end of year 9. So the 3 options are, there's an introduction to essential mathematics, an introduction to general mathematics, and then an introduction to mathematical methods. Mr. Mondolo, who is our head of faculty for mathematics, he'll look very closely at the year 9 results and place the students into the appropriate class. If at the end of this year you would like to have that subject choice reconsidered, and perhaps you desperately would like to try methods even though you might be initially placed in general, then that's definitely a conversation for you to have with the team here at school, and we can see how we can help you with that. Year 10 is about experience. So we would encourage boys to have an experience in something they feel passionate about. However, using the data to find the most appropriate class is important to help students be in the right place according to their skill level. The humanities course in year 10 is a little bit different. So in the past, the boys have been studying history and geography units, all similar across the whole cohort. But in year 10, students will actually get to choose 4 topics of study, and each of these 4 topics will take a term each, and there's 8 units in total that they can choose from. So in the past, we've offered subjects like ancient Egypt, Pompeii, Vietnam War, climate change, and so on. So there's a little bit of ancient history, some modern history, and some geography. Now the students will be asked in term 4, separate to this subject selection process, they'll be asked which 4 of the 8 they would like to study, and they'll be allocated a unit for each term. They won't get to choose what term they get to study it in, but they'll get to have a choice of those 4 interest topics. And then that will hopefully give them a taste of if they would like to move into, say, senior geography, modern history or ancient history in year 11 and 12. So these are our elective subjects, and the students get to choose 3 from this list. You'll see here a lot of these subjects are very similar to what the boys have studied in grade 9, but there are a couple of changes. And the big change in particular for year 10 is science becomes an elective. So you can see there in red that students can choose either physical science or life science. Physical science really focuses on skills and knowledge that would be related to physics and chemistry in senior years. Life science is more focused on biology and marine science, which would then be a pathway into those senior subjects. Students need to choose one of those sciences if they were looking at following with that pathway into senior. So for instance, if a student was thinking, I would like to study physics or chemistry in grade 11 and 12, and I know I need to study that for a particular university course that I'd like to do, then they should definitely be choosing physical science in year 10. Conversely, if they thought I'd like to study biology or marine science in year 11 and 12, then they should be choosing life science in grade 10. If a student studies physical science in year 10, they can potentially choose any of the 4 senior sciences. So just as an example, if a student was thinking I'd like to do in year 11 and 12 chemistry and biology, then by just simply studying physical science in year 10, they would have an entry into both of those subjects, because the skills taught in physical science are sufficient to be able to be successful in biology and marine in senior. When you look at those other elective subjects on the screen there, you would see that many of the boys will think, I've been studying drama, for instance, this year. I love drama, I want to continue with drama. That's absolutely fine. A subject like Japanese, if that hasn't been studied in year 9, there would be some difficulty being able to pick that up in year 10. And in fact, a conversation with our head of Japanese, Mr. Morozzi, would be required, because you can imagine there's a considerable amount of language development in the last 12 months that a student would have missed. However, if a student didn't study, for instance, commerce in grade 9 and they wanted to study commerce in year 10, they would be able to do that. That would be no problems at all. Some boys will struggle to just pick 3 from that list. They might think, I'm doing 3 electives this year that I love, but I also want to do a science because I want to make sure I can do a science in senior. And it can be quite challenging to narrow it down just to those 3 choices. So that's why it's important over the next couple of weeks to really do your research to decide what it is that you would like to be studying in year 10. Remember, year 10 is all about gaining experience. So that way you can make the best decision when it comes to choosing those 6 subjects for senior. So having a go at a subject to determine, look, I'm going to pick design, and you'll find out I love design, I really want to do that in senior, Or no, maybe design is not for me. I've had a go, I'm glad I had a go, but I've learnt from that experience now and I'm going to be looking at other options. So when we're choosing our electives, it's really important to consider these three things. What are you good at? What are you interested in and what do you enjoy? And what skills could you acquire and develop? Because all of those skills and knowledge that you gain will help you in future ways. Our subjects are designed to try and keep as many options open as you can, and that's why we have those core compulsory subjects in Year 10, so you're still getting a broad range of learning experiences. It is important though to remember that when you're choosing electives, you are choosing them for a 12-month period. I've been processing a number of subject changes in the last few weeks, and it's often because students haven't taken the time to really research what a subject's about, and then they find it's different to what they thought and they'd like to move. And sometimes it leads to difficult conversations because a move may not be possible if a class is full or if there's a timetable clash. So it's really important to try and get these choices as close to being exactly what you want, where possible. We build the timetable on the choices that the boys make. So after the subject's preferences all come in, we then look at how many classes do we need for music or for commerce or for aero skills. And once that timetable then is finalised though, if a subject change was to occur early at the start of next year, there are going to be some limitations and constraints at that point. So please try your best to make the best possible choices. When you're choosing these electives, it's also really important to consider those subject progressions into senior. So I've got an example there that, if you studied Year 9 and 10 commerce, then that would lead quite easily into economics or business or accounting or legal studies or the cert in business into senior. However, that's not actually a prerequisite. You could potentially study business in Year 11 and 12 and not have studied commerce. There is certainly a lot of knowledge that you would gain in that junior commerce program, but it's not a prerequisite, and we'll talk more about prerequisites in a moment. I just mentioned in the earlier slide about subject changes. They will still continue to occur at the end of each semester, but as I said, there can be some limitations based on the timetable constraints at the time. So how can you find out more about these Year 10 subject offerings? The best place to start is the Year 10 Studies Guide, and that's on the website and also in the Iona Careers and VET page. And when you access that page, I'll show you a screenshot of that in a moment. There's a great whole page devoted to Year 9 students moving into Year 10 in 2022. That studies guide actually has a really great table in it about the subject progressions. So for instance, if you're starting with commerce in Year 9, Year 10, what are those subjects that you could choose in senior? Or if you're looking at history in Year 9 and 10, where would that move to in senior? There's also on that careers website some subject presentations that the heads of faculty have made. You can also find lots of information from your heads of faculty, the heads of department, and the subject teachers of those areas. And you could talk to the current senior students who are studying those subjects. So there might be someone in your homeroom that currently studies physical science in grade 10. You could ask them, what do you do in physical science? What's the assessment like? How much homework do you tend to need to do? Is there more exams than assignments? Whatever it is that you think will help you make the best decision for you. So this is the Iona Careers and VET website I was talking about. You can see there over on the far right side, the For Students tab. That's the best place to go to for a lot of this subject selection information. And when you click on that drop down box there, you're able to see particularly a page for Year 9 moving to Year 10 in 2022. Lots of information there that'll help with your decision making. Another thing to consider as you move into Year 10 is work experience, and we offer work experience for our students in Year 10, 11 and 12. And particularly if your son's considering an apprenticeship or a traineeship, then they should consider applying for work experience next year. The dates for work experience are in the college calendar published each year, and it's really important those dates are met because there's quite a lot of organisation behind the scenes to get work experience to occur. We have to make sure we follow the legal requirements to ensure that students are properly covered by insurance and so on if they are on a work site. There's lots of opportunities for work experience, and if you would like more information about that, then Mrs. Barker in the Pathway Centre is the best person to speak to, and she can certainly provide you with all the information that you need. I touched briefly before about prerequisites, and I think it's important at this point in Year 9 to start that conversation, because our current students in Year 10 are really focused on this right now for their senior subject selections. So what a prerequisite means, it's basically a cutoff that you need to have to be able to be eligible for a course into senior. Now, a lot of our subjects in Year 11 and 12 require, for instance, a C standard in English for many of our general subjects. So students now in Year 9, and particularly once they start Year 10 next year, they have to, right from the get-go, do what they can to try and achieve that C standard, because we will actually use their semester 1 result in Year 10 to determine which subjects they're eligible for the subject selection into senior. A lot of our mathematics and science courses also have different result requirements to move into those senior areas. We also consider safety and behaviour in workshops and in the art rooms and so on if students want to pursue those subject areas. We can't have students working in, say, a building and construction workshop or in an art room with equipment, and some of the equipment, is quite, can be quite dangerous if used in an incorrect manner. So safety and behaviour there is paramount. If you'd like more information about prerequisites, that can also be found on the Iona Careers and Vet website, and you'll be able to read through some of the requirements there. When we're talking about Year 11 and 12, we try and keep most options open, as I mentioned before, but there are some exceptions, of course. And I mentioned earlier about Japanese and content that would be missed, for instance, if you didn't study it in Year 9 and you were looking to study it in Year 10. And of course, that continues on into senior years. Music would be another one where, we would need to be able to be confident if you're moving into a senior music program that you have some musical literacy to be able to read and understand music, for instance. Then there's other subjects where previous study in junior secondary is worthwhile. So, for instance, if you'd studied visual art in Year 9 and 10, then that would certainly be of benefit for senior art studies and so on. So it's important just to make sure you keep those options open. And when I'm talking to students about subject choices, I'm all the time sort of saying to them, what are you considering doing in Year 11 and 12? What would you like to be doing when you leave school? Because often through looking ahead that we can determine what would be our best course of action for now. And this is ultimately what we're trying to prepare the students to receive. So that's the Queensland Certificate of Education, which basically says that a student has graduated at the end of Year 12. And so there's lots of different learning requirements to be met to receive the QCE, and whether a student heads off onto a trade pathway into the workforce or onto university or TAFE, most students want to be able to leave here with this certificate, say, yes, I've finished grade 12, because it's an important juncture in their learning and an important milestone to reach. So we want to be able to help students reach that QCE. And next year, when you're looking at senior subject selection, we'll talk more about the QCE, ATAR and so on, to make sure that you're fully aware of the process and what a student needs to do to receive those different qualifications at the end of Year 12. So let's move on to the mechanics of how to do all this. How are we going to enter our subject preferences? So in the coming days, you'll receive an email with a particular link for your child. So parents, you'll receive this email and it'll be unique to your student. So please don't forward this link to another parent, for instance, if they didn't receive the email, because it'll only direct you to your student's preferences. There's no rush. It's not a first in, best dressed type situation, and once a class is full, that's it. You've got until the end of week 3, Friday the 6th of August, to put in those preferences. We won't start looking at numbers or classes or anything like that until after that date. But if I can please request that we do try and stick to that week 3 cutoff. Often I have to really chase students and families to put in those preferences after that closing date, and it does have flow-on effects to our ability to start that timetabling process for the new year. So if you could please try and meet that cutoff. If you've got any concerns or questions about it leading up to that, by all means, please get in touch. Or if you're having difficulty accessing the website and the preference software, please let us know and we'll be happy to help you through the process. So when you click on the link that you receive in the email, this is what the web preferences page will look like. And my advice to you is to keep going while you can see green buttons on the page. And you can see here I've got circled on this first page. This is the landing spot when you first click on the link and you want to click on the Add New Preferences tab there. So we can see that green button. We're going to go to the green button and click on that. And it'll take us to this screen here where we're asked to select 3 preferences. Normally you'll also be asked to add a reserve. The reserve is just put there just in case, for instance, one of these subjects doesn't get sufficient numbers to run a class, or if there's no way that we can make it fit within the timetable, we might look to use that reserve. But we would get in contact with you if there was a need for that. Now you can see here there's the 3 preferences. It's not in order of importance. So preference 1 is not necessarily the one that you must have. All 3 are of equal importance. So you put your 3 choices there in the drop down boxes. It'll bring up all the subjects that are available. Just choose the one that you would like in each box there. And then you can see the green button there, proceed. So you continue on to proceed. It'll ask you then at the next stage to check the preferences that you've entered to make sure that they are correct. And you can see there's submit valid preferences. So we click on that green button again and it'll bring you to this receipt. We do ask that parents print this receipt and sign it and hand that into student reception once it's done. We keep the printed copy on file, so just in case there was any issues from our end with the software and the collation of subject changes and inputting, we'd have a paper-based record of it there. So that can just be dropped into student reception. If you can't print it, please don't stress. Just let your son get into let me know that couldn't happen. Once you've then printed that receipt there, you can see there's a log out button at the top right corner. If you click on log out, that'll finish the process for you there. So just finally looking at our steps from here, what we need to do. So step 1 is to have a look at that Year 10 Studies Guide. That's really an important place to start, and to visit that Iona and Careers and VET website. In fact, I would recommend go straight to the Iona Careers and VET website because you'll find the Studies Guide there as well as all the subject specific information. So that's a one-stop shop for a lot of your information right there. Then spend the next few days and coming weeks considering your options, looking ahead to what you might like to do in senior years, looking ahead to even what you might do after you finish school, talking to your teachers, talking to the heads of faculty, gathering as much information as you can so you're making an informed decision for the next 12 months. And then once you're happy, enter those choices online by the 6th of August. All that information will be emailed out to parents with the link, as I said, in the coming days. Now, if you don't hear from us, that means that we've received your preferences. There's no problems. We're able to timetable that. Your son's got his choices. If there is an issue, we will contact you. So please don't be alarmed if there's a few months and you don't hear anything. You can assume that everything's going ahead as expected. So that's the end of the information section of tonight's presentation. We will remain online to answer any questions that you may have about subject selection for 2022 for the next few minutes. So please add those to the chat if you have any questions. By all means, if after tonight's session you've still got some unanswered questions, please contact the college and they will get you through to myself and I'll be happy to help. I appreciate the time that you've taken out of your evening this evening to be a part of this, and while it's certainly quite different to seeing you all face to face in IPAC, I hope this information was helpful and relevant, and I look forward to working with you and your sons as we move into Year 10 in 2022. Take care, God bless, and stay safe.